Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about Jaden Daniels, of course, but a lot of it's really about the numbers that from his first 3 games, what jumps out, and trying to add some context to them, because it's been pretty impressive, as you know. And it's funny because, I'm not one into comparison, and I'm not going to compare like CJ Stroud. What he did last year was phenomenal. They're different quarterbacks. They have there's some similarities in terms of, I think, mindset, approach, et cetera. But Daniels is more of a dual threat. CJ was a terrific threat from the pocket, and Daniels is getting there as well. So, and I think he will be as well, but it's just that dual threat. So the numbers aren't going to be quite as impressive as CJ Stroud's as far as the passing numbers in terms of total yards, but the overall numbers are pretty damn impressive, and that's what we wanted to point out. So, and I'm going to get to Jaden Daniels in a minute. So in a few minutes, I'm going to be joined by ESPN's Josh Weinfuss to talk about the Cardinals, Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, what he thinks about him and his return to Arizona, what went wrong there, and why maybe he's just in a much better spot for himself right now. And also maybe some thoughts on Jaden Daniels from the other side. But so today I'm combining 2 of my elements here. It's going to be doing 5 things, I think, and then also followed by Josh Weinfuss. So I'm going to do kind of slightly abbreviated version of the 5 things, still 5 things, maybe just not quite as long, so I don't have to bore you to tears with all this, with hearing my voice for too long. So anyways, but let's start with Jaden Daniels. So one of the things that I think jumps out, and again, you look at the numbers and they're really impressive, but it's always like, when you talk to people who've been in the league, whether they're quarterbacks or former coaches, it's always about the support system you build around the quarterback. Now, I think for fans, sometimes media, maybe you're thinking, okay, receivers, offensive line, all important. That's very true. But the bigger thing really is the room. So whether it's you have a veteran quarterback in there like a Marcus Mariota, but then it goes really deeper to quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, and then obviously head coach. But Jaden Daniels has been telling a lot of people, just how happy he is with what the setup he has in Washington. That's Kingsbury. That's all. It's everything, So I think that's certainly when a quarterback is happy, then there's it's an atmosphere conducive to helping to grow. That's also the atmosphere that Dan Quinn has built as well. And it's a trickle down effect. And so if you have a coach who's in a much negative way, there's also a trickle down effect of that too. Quinn is the opposite, but I think that helps a guy like Jaden Daniels, because I think that's how a lot of players thrive. But I do know it's why he feels really good. And when you look at Kingsbury, the way he's brought him along through the first couple of games and slowly building on each game and each step along the way. It's not hey, we're going to ask you to do all these difficult things right away. It's like, build it up, execute this, execute that, continue to grow, add. And I think that's what they're doing. And so I think he feels really good about Kingsbury's approach to helping him develop as a rookie and allowing him to have success while he's doing that. Like, listen, there's a reason why he looks confident out there, and it's a lot of it stems from his work, but it's also about, like, when you're confident, there's confidence in what the coaches are telling you, asking you to do, and what you're trying to see. I was talking to someone earlier, and they talked about just like watching him and how decisive and confident he is with his passes. That's all good. Like that stems from, your work, but also stems from what you're being asked to do. And so I think it's an all-around effort here helping Jaden Daniels get to this point. Now, we all know he's going to have a game where it just doesn't look as good because he's human, and every quarterback goes through that. But I also, the question then would become, do they have enough around him when he doesn't play well, can they win? And right now we don't know, because we haven't seen that yet. We need to see, can the defense actually improve and then be a reason why they win games, not why. Listen, man, they haven't punted since the first game, and they if Jaden Daniels doesn't have an all-world game on Monday, they could lose that game. And then, there were some fortunate breaks and poor red zone play, but 3-point win over the Giants, a last second field goal in a game where you didn't punt. So the question is then, can they do that? But that's for another day. But right now, it's really about how is Jaden Daniels progressing? Is he in the good spot? And the answer is yes. And I think there's some smart coaching going on combined with a quarterback who really likes to learn and doesn't get caught up in himself. And I think that's important as well. And we've seen that time and time again. I don't have to give examples. There was another one this week. It's just who he is. So you kind of have to just, hey, this is who he is. And don't be surprised or wowed by that because it's who he is. Anyway, so just want to go on there. Number 2, Dan Quinn's approach. And I think one of the things that when you have injuries, whatever, or multiple players playing in a spot, rotating, and guys might be more one game and not less, how do you handle that as a coach? So for Quinn, there's a couple of things. One, I like that he finds what guys can do. And when you surround yourself with coaches who like, what can a guy do? And I've talked about this before, but Greg Williams was great at that when he was in Washington. Find out what a guy can do, design, not get him in a package that you have that can magnify or amplify what that guy can do to help the team. And I think this staff is very good at that, but I also think Quinn's approach helps as well. So like little things, Jeremy McNichols is going to fill in for Austin Ekeler this week. And as we talk, I'm not sure yet who's going to be the running back off the practice squad, whether it's Michael Wiley, whom they liked this summer, or Chris Rodriguez. And they certainly, like Wiley was working ahead of Rodriguez all summer. And to the point where I was a little bit surprised that Rodriguez actually returned. But so anyways, you can go to my Twitter feed or whatever to figure out who gets called up. You'll know. But point is, it'll be one of those two guys. But as far as McNichols will take the bulk of the Ekeler reps. And it's funny because when you listen to coach, like you're going to spin it forward, like, hey, this is a great opportunity for him, and really happy with what they see, blah blah blah. That's what Quinn says about McNichols. So it's when you have them, it instills confidence in a guy, and it instills belief in a guy that, hey, okay, yes, this guy's down, this guy's important to the team, he's down, but this guy has belief in me too. When a coach has belief in you, it just makes a world of difference. And I do think that Quinn is able to instill that in guys because of that approach. He's heard him say once, he's an optimist, right? And I know we used to hear Ron Rivera say that too, but I think then how does it play out? And I think Quinn kind of follows that a lot more. I think there were times where Ron would try to see the best outcome versus maybe working to that best outcome, but by what you're surrounding yourself with, et cetera. And I think that's something Quinn does. But then I also look at so for example, Olamide Zaccheaus did not play as much the other night, played a lot more of the previous game with Noah Brown here. The snaps, the more he gets comfortable, the more his snaps could go down. But he said that he talked about so somebody asked him about Quinn about Noah Brown the other day. And he starts talking about, but then he goes to Zaccheaus because he knows that they're going to need Zaccheaus. And he's been clear. Quinn has said a lot, like they're not just going to have, one guy be the number 2 receiver. That's going to be every week. It could be a little bit different, but you need to keep those guys involved. You need to make sure that they know that they're appreciating what they're doing. But he was talking about, like, as he's talking about Noah Brown, he starts talking about how cool it was to see Zaccheaus and his excitement for Noah Brown after some of those plays. And so, when a coach, I think, recognizes you for doing something when in a game where you didn't really do anything, then I think that helps build a certain level of, just confidence, or like, hey, you matter even when you're not doing anything. And the coach singled me out or pointed me out at a time where I didn't do anything other than be a good teammate. And I think, but that stuff matters. And one thing Quinn has preached a lot about that, but you have to act it that way, and you get that. That's the result. What he's getting out, what he's putting into that belief. So anyway, there you go. Number 3, speaking of the loss of Ekeler, I'm curious to see, and again, it could be Wiley or Rodriguez. I'm curious to see what they do because first of all, on kick returns, he was pretty good. And he had the one return for touchdown that was called back. And, it's funny because even in talking about that play, that penalty on Belor a couple games ago, one of the things that somebody told me that they worried with the way the how spread out it is now, that officials may not see everything. So if you see a guy going to the ground, you may assume that he was held or something wrong, bad, something negative, or must have been a penalty. So you're going to throw the flag. That's kind of the thinking that they had with them, and that stems from the new kickoff format. But the other thing they said that someone told me about with Eckler as a returner, and he had another long one, of course, on Monday, that it's hard to see him behind the wall. So when you're running downfield, like they said in practice during the summer, it was hard to see Eckler. So it creates some, I always, Eckler takes advantage of his size. He's a short guy, but short can help, and he's tough. He's quick. So if you have that and you can kind of get lost behind guys, that works to your advantage. So that's one of the things that they won't have available to them. But the other thing is, too, the pairing of Robinson and Eckler in the backfield. I like that setting. I like how Kingsbury would take advantage of that. So they've done that 14 times, and they run that 14 times with those two in the backfield. They've gained a total of 113 yards, and Daniels is 5 for 5 with 74 yards in those situations. And sometimes it's just swing pass, but those plays matter. Like one thing Kingsbury makes you do is defend all of the field. And it could be a swing pass. It could be, the bubble. It could be, slants down the field. But you have to defend everything. So you have to honor, you have to be aware, not that they wouldn't go if Eckler runs in motion out of that two split backfield, then you're going to go with him anyways, but you know that it's a good chance he's going to get the ball. So it could open up maybe it diverts somebody else's attention over there because you did it earlier, and maybe that opens up something for somebody else. So they've done a good job with that. That's one of the things that I'm curious to see what happens. Like, what do they come up with it wasn't a huge part of the game, but it was a part of the game for them for sure. And I think they can move the ball in this Arizona defense, even though it's been an improving defense. But I'm going to let Josh talk about that in a minute, so I'm not going to get too much into that. Number 4, some of the coverage issues, right? We've seen them, and I'll go back to Monday night because one of the things that my point, you go man to man, or if it's a cover 3 and you end up with that guy. It's really hard when you're going against Jamar Chase and you have Mike Sanders still on. He's new to playing outside, and so it's different when you're playing inside. Now I will say, like when you're outside, there are only so many routes that the guy can run. Inside, there's a lot more choices, so it can be a little bit more difficult inside there. Plus, you have to worry about the run and all that, and there's a lot of traffic. But it's still a different type of guy you're facing outside, and Jamar Chase is different. So one of the things that Sanders still said is, I just got to play over the top, play the route. So on those plays, this is where if you say, can it improve? Well, here's how. And I don't know if it will, but they know what's going on. It's not like, oh, he just got beat, he couldn't do anything. It's he didn't play the route right. Now, they were told in that alignment that this is what's going to happen. They're going to take a shot in this alignment. They were preached that. Well, it's the first time somebody's seeing it, right? First time Sanders was doing in this situation as a rookie, so it's tough. So he runs a double move and he bites on it. And the message to him after, and the message that Sanders knows is play the route, stay over the top of the route. Don't fall for that because this is what they like to do. And if you give up a 15-yard comeback, so be it. Don't get beat over the top. But that's a lesson that he learned. And that's sometimes, I've heard Logan Paulson talk about this too. Sometimes you just got to learn that lesson one time and say, okay, now I got it. And I think that could be the case for him because I think he's a smart player. And I think that won't, but I think that's a good lesson for him when you're in that spot. Play the route. In this spot, they're going to do this. If you know that, play that. Trust what they're telling you, but it's hard because you see a guy like Chase make a move. You don't want to give up anything, but you're going to have to be content giving up something to take away something a lot more dangerous, like a 41-yard touchdown pass. So that's just something that, I think I'll be curious to see what happens this week with it because they are facing Marvin Harrison, and that's going to be a tough matchup. And, we all know that. And, how do you defend it? Because the thing what they have to do, they're not stopping the run, and they're going to have to stop the run on Sunday against James Conner because that's going to be a problem. And this is number 5, defending Arizona. So stopping James Conner is going to be a big issue because if they let him run, and they can run, and this team has not stopped the run, that's going to be a big issue for them on Sunday. So how can you do that? Well, can you get another man in the box? The problem is if you're giving up these big plays, then it's hard to then trust the corners. So that's why it's important to play the route, stay with your guy or stay with the route cover concept, whatever, and play that, because if you can then get an 8-man in the box, maybe you can do some different things. But if you're always having to have 2 deep, then you're going to give up yards on the ground. They're just not equipped to stop it. I'm watching Detroit last week against Arizona, and it's just a different defense. Like, they played faster than what I've seen this group play. It's more together, same system for a couple of years, all of them. But I also think that, you need to start seeing some guys up front start making some plays, getting off blocks. I get the double teams. You still get some singles situations. You got to get off blocks and make plays. And there were some times last week where some guys might get off a block, but another gap is just pushed a little bit wide. So there was one play, I think it was Johnny Newton. He could have pinched the Bengals back, could have been like a 1 or 2 yard loss. And instead, because the other side is not pinching, there's a gap, and so you can avoid, and you just hit the gap, and it's like 12 yards. It happened a few times where it's like could have been a 1 yard loss or 2 yard loss, but it was a 10 to 12 yard game because of a missed tackle or a gap that just got a little bit wider. You do that Sunday, and they're just going to run all day, and then it'll be a wrap. So so what do? Can you get that 8th guy in the box? Can you trust your corners to play the way they need to? Because you may have to do that at times. So that's going to be a key. And obviously defending Kyler Murray. And it's funny watching him. He's a short guy. And it's fun. I go back to the Eckler stuff. The safeties are being told, like, it's going to be hard to see him back there. So usually you're going to play the eyes, and watching the quarterback, getting a read on the eyes, et cetera. It's hard to do that with him. You can't always find him. So a lot of times you're just going to be playing the ball. And so you may get a late jump sometimes because of that. So that's the difficulty. And I think Arizona does a good job of creating some space for Murray in the backfield, whether it's with the splits of the linemen, creating some passing lanes, or just the depth of the drops and or moving them a little bit, right? And then so that gives him that vision that he needs, and it makes him dangerous. And he does. The other thing is, you're going to see him, he can throw from different arm slots. And there are sometimes the guys in his face, and he just kind of boom, like that. Almost, and some of that goes back to his baseball days where you just have to have different arm angles or arm slots. And some of it's just, he's such a good athlete. So that's where it's going to be a challenge. And then obviously keeping him in the pocket, because once he gets outside there, he will run, but he's going to look to throw, and he's going to look to make some big plays off that. So you got to then lock on your guys, which they haven't always done, but can you keep him in the pocket? It's a challenge. They haven't done that so far, so I'm not confident that they can. Maybe this is a game because it needs to be, but I would anticipate, because Kyler Murray does this to everybody, I'm anticipating him getting outside the pocket, and the chance of a big play is huge. If you can get to him a little bit and at least make him throw over the top of you, then maybe you can get some inaccurate throws, maybe a pick or two, because they're going to win this game. The defense is going to have to produce something. You simply cannot let or expect this offense to continue going without punting. They're going to have a punt at some time. They're going to turn it over at some time. They've been phenomenal with the ball. And Daniels makes such smart decisions with the ball. But at some point, something's going to bounce off the fingertips, and can you then, as a defense, bow up and take care of your business and start creating some plays for the offense to help them out, because they're not doing that well enough. And, the red zone will be key, but can you take the ball away a couple of times? Because if you don't, you're asking an awful lot of the offense. So they have to play a lot better. If they want to win this game, the defense is going to have to play a lot better than they have the last couple of games. It's possible, very possible. Because I think this offense, I'd be really curious to see how this offense fares again for another week, and how do they build on that Bengals game and to the Giants game. Shoot, the building part for that was they converted in the red zone. So can they keep doing that? That's 2 really, really good offensive games in a row. One was better with the points because they converted. Shoot, even against Tampa, could have scored 30 points. It was there. They didn't. But the point is that it's not like last week was an aberration. I think it's a building of things. So I'd be curious to see how that unfolds on Sunday. So, but the defense doesn't show up better, then I think it's going to be a real tough one. If they do, it's going to be a very fun game. So anyway, folks, that's it from me. Stay tuned. Here's my conversation with ESPN's Josh Weinfuss.
TD, Tutty, in for 6. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We don't care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns, and DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the Sportsbook app and use code KEIM, that's code KEIM, K-E-I-M, for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball.
Josh, it is the Cliff Kingsbury homecoming week. So I'm going to talk about Kyler Murray and all the things that he poses, the problems and the defense that seems to be better than people thought it would be. But I do want to start with Kingsbury since, a homecoming. And I'm just curious, we talked before after he was hired here about what he adds, but I'm curious, what do you think this game, knowing what you're covering him here, what do you think this game will mean to him, and what will it mean to guys like Kyler Murray facing him?
I don't think it's going to mean a ton to Cliff because there's been so much turnover on the roster. Obviously, the biggest piece is still there in Kyler, but the GM's gone. Obviously, the owner's still there, but I just don't see him being as emotionally invested in this game as Kyler is. And I think that's partially because he's not the head coach. I think if he was the head coach, he'd want to beat the brakes off his team. But I think he just wants Jaden to go out there and play great football because that will show everyone hey, I can do this. This is what I'm really, really good at. It's what I'm known for. So I don't think that he's as emotionally invested as Kyler is. I think Kyler wants to win this game more than he'll ever let on. I think this is a statement game for him personally because of everything he went through with Cliff, especially towards the end of Cliff's tenure here. So I think that this is going to, I think everyone knows that too in the locker room. So this is going to be a charged day in Glendale. I think Kyler's going to want to go out there and do everything like Cliff's basically told him he could have, which is throw the ball downfield. Cliff wanted him to be the centerpiece of this offense by running the ball, and Kyler's going to be like, well, look what I can do. I'm a drop back passer who can run if I need to.
What was the state of that relationship at the end of the tenure? Why would Kyler, it's more than just hey, I want to do this. No, do that. What was it like?
Nothing like rehashing the past, John Kime.
Well, I'm setting up the game.
It was tenuous. It was really tenuous. They did not really interact much the last year and a half of them being together. And obviously that ended with Kyler getting hurt. Was it week 14 or somewhere around there in 2022, which led to what was not part of Cliff's firing, but then led into Cliff's firing. Here's what it came down to is Kyler wanted to be coached very hard. He wanted someone to get in his face. He wanted someone to yell at him and tell him what he was doing wrong. He wanted someone to MF him, which he had gotten from his high school coach and his college coach. And Cliff just never did that. He handled him with kids' gloves. And, that's not what Kyler wanted. He wanted someone to be kind of on his back about playing good football. And Cliff never did it. And it showed, I think, not just with Kyler, with the entire team. They were very undisciplined. They were either led or they're in the top 5 of most penalties all 4 of Cliff's years in Arizona, which also was an issue dating back to his time at Texas Tech. They were undisciplined too. So, it was interesting because it seemed like all 4 years, maybe not 19, it's like 2021, 22, at the end of the season, I always seem to ask Kyler a question about the little thing and what this team didn't do. And he was always so frustrated how this team never fixed the little things throughout the year, which is why they had their late season issues. And to me, that's all on the head coach. That's all on the head coach setting a culture, setting a standard, and he did none of that. Guys love playing for him because he was a player's coach, but I think it was too extreme, and especially with Kyler. He wanted him to be hard on him, and he simply wasn't. It's easier with the background.
All right. So now, as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, Josh has changed positions because the sound is just a lot better out here. So I appreciate Josh doing that. But I want to continue on the Kyler Murray thing since that's where we kind of paused the show there for a second. But you said you wanted to be coach hard. Is that what he's getting now?
Yes, he's getting the coaching he's always wanted in the NFL, and that's it's fair coaching. It's a coach that's basically, I mean, he's getting coaching from all different levels. He's a quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, and a head coach. Whereas when under Kingsbury, Cliff was the OC and head coach, play caller. So he had one person doing all of that, which I don't did not work, right? Whether that works other places is whatever. That's their own issue, but it did not work here. And he's getting the feedback. He's having someone tell him no. He's having someone tell him this is why we're doing this. This is why we should do this. This is why we're not doing this. And he appreciates that. He really does. And Drew Petzing, the OC now, is a very bright man. Very bright man. I'm not saying Cliff isn't. I'm just saying like that's what he's working with now. He's a great quarterbacks coach, and Israel Wolfork, they call him Izzy. But he just seems to has all the infrastructure to succeed. And that just wasn't the case in Arizona. And I think partially, I think we bag on Cliff a lot, but it just wasn't a good situation for him in general, right? They hired him in 2019, right? And he didn't have all the resources he needed to be a successful head coach. And what I mean by that is when he got here, they just said, here's your staff. It doesn't work like that in the NFL, right? If you want a good recipe, this. A recipe for success is kind of building that culture that you want with the staff that you want, the people that you want. Here, they said, here's the head coach. Steve Keim, the former GM, said, here's your staff. He didn't really, I think he hired like one or two people that he knew, but other than that, it was all people that were given to him. That's just not how teams win, right? And they were able to make up for it a little bit in 2021 with the talent they had, but it just was not something that worked. And now, Jonathan Gannon, the head coach here, he brought in the staff he wanted with the people that he wanted, and the mindsets, and everyone's on the same page. And this is working well for Kyler, as well as it's worked since he's been in the NFL.
And we had talked about this before, but talking to people here, they think, I think what struck them is how comfortable Kingsbury is just being a coordinator and how almost happy he is, to be honest. I'm going to guess that doesn't surprise you.
Not all. It's the least shocking thing I'm going to hear all day, right? Like, here's the thing. When he went from college, from Texas Tech to the Cardinals, he loved not recruiting. He hated recruiting. And now I can see him loving this role because he's not dealing with everything, right? Because a head coach is, in my opinion, the more successful head coaches are the CEOs, the guys who handle everything and not have to focus on an offense or defense. That's just my opinion. Yeah. He had to run the offense, he had to run the team, he had to, handle all the player issues, he had to work with personnel. Like his last year working with the GM was a nightmare for a head coach because the GM wasn't around. So you have, Cliff walking down to Keim's office to try to get a new offensive lineman, and Keim's just not there, right? So it's just also not you, the other Keim.
I would say I'm here. He could have. You would have
been there. You would have been there every day. I know that, but like it just was not conducive to his success. And now, like, I'm not surprised to hear that because the guy's a football junkie. He's a film junkie. He's an offensive junkie. He's a quarterback junkie. Like he loves all of that. And if he can lock himself into a room, like he's not married, he doesn't have kids, but he's married to the game, which I think is a great for him, right? Like it works for him. If he can just lock himself in a room and just watch film of every level of football, trying to get a little play here or there, or the movement on a play from a Division III or NAIA school and implement it to what the Commanders are doing, like that's what he loves. And I think for him to be able to put all that time and effort into football at this level where there's no recruiting, there's no like booster meetings, like there's none of the extra stuff. It's all football all the time. Like I'm not surprised he loves this. Like I expected this kind of to happen at some point for him to flourish in a role like this. And I think we're seeing kind of that's what he's doing.
Have you been able to talk much to the players about what they expect from like Jaden Daniels facing him and what their thoughts are on him? I know as we tape this, you've only been in locker room, I think probably one day, but
one day.
Yeah. Was there much talk about that aspect yet? Or, just what your sense from what they're thinking about him?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we talked a little bit to Kyler. So Kyler and Jaden have a little bit of a relationship. They met at the mall
Yeah.
here actually randomly when Jaden was at ASU. But like Gannon and the DC have all said like there's not a ton of tape on him. Obviously, it's 3 games, so they like they're obviously breaking that down immensely. Um, they're looking. They've talked to people who've been here under Cliff to kind of get a sense of the scheme he runs and his tendencies and stuff like that. And they watched some of Jaden Daniels' college tape just to get his tendencies. But I mean, I think uh, anyone who's been around, like like when there's a rookie quarterback involved, there's not a lot of, especially early in the season,
Right.
not a lot to work off of, especially when he's going to a new coaching staff, all that stuff. So they know who he is as a player. They've seen 3 games from him. They obviously watched what he did on Monday night, so they have an idea. But I just think it might not be. It'll be interesting to see if it's enough.
Right. So I'm going to get back to Kyler in a minute, just from, forgetting the Kingsbury stuff now, but the defense seems like, going into the year, doesn't seem like there are a lot of high expectations for them. Where are they at now?
I think they've surpassed quite a few expectations, especially the pass rush. This pass rush was not expected to be productive or as productive as it's been, and they've been getting a ton of pressure off the edge. The defensive front, people are saying it's not living up to the hype, but I think that to me it is. Like they need to get pushed, and that's what they're getting. The cornerbacks were not expected to be very, very productive, a very good unit, and they've been better than people think. I think this weekend will be a massive test for them with Terry McLaurin. I think who the Cardinals put on him will be telling. Like who their we know who their number one is, but how that's going to how he's going to do on that. That's Sean Murphy Bunting. I think it's going to be very interesting how he faces or he does against Terry. But this defense as a whole, it's better than expected. There's still some issues it needs to address, but injuries are starting to pile up, and it's going to be that could be the biggest issue.
And because Jones is out, correct? He's out for the year.
Justin Jones is out with a triceps injury. They already lost probably who was the guy who's going to be their star pass rusher, BJ Ojolari, during training camp. And then I'm trying to think this week, there's not really many other issues long term. The offensive line is a little banged up, but that should be it on defense.
And so with Jones, what's the impact of him being lost?
Yeah, I think it's just consistency. I think it's just having the same guy out there every play. Now they're going to have to replace him with multiple players. So I think that could be an issue. People are trying to bag on him for getting hurt 3 games into a 3-year, $31 million deal, but like it's football. That happens. Like, and get hurt. Like these guys are hurt the day they step on the field for training camp. But he's been consistent with that push up front. Like I said, like they rebuilt their defensive front, and he was a key part of that. So losing him is going to hurt, but they have some pretty good depth up there, and they'll probably just use some sort of rotation to replace him.
How important is Budda Baker to that D?
Oh, he's the heart and soul of this defense. He's how he goes, so goes this defense. He can do a little bit of everything. I think what we've seen last couple of years, kind of his impact last couple of years, is how teams are staying away from him, and that completely changes the defensive approach and an offensive approach to the Cardinals. And he doesn't get his hand on the ball as much as he wants. He's not involved in a ton of plays directly, but indirectly, just his presence alone impacts his defense.
Offensively, you obviously we know about Kyler, but where is he maybe better this year than the past?
Oh, that's a good question, John. So it's a long answer. So there's a lot of ways I think he's better than he's been in the past. I think one is he's happier, right? He's legitimately happier, and maybe the happiest he's been in the NFL. He has a system he really likes, different than what he ran with under Kingsbury. He has a coaching staff he gets along with, coaches he really likes. He has the skilled players to go around him. He has a great offensive line to compare to what he's had in the past. And he's able to kind of do what he does, and that's sit back and just sling the ball all over the yard. And when he has to run, he runs. Like he's had a lot of rushing yards this year, but they're not necessarily on design play, right? They're him scrambling out of trouble. And his ability to extend plays has been a major asset for this team. And obviously, he has Marvin Harrison Jr. as an incredible target to throw to. So it seems like he's playing. I think he's playing the best football he's played since 2021, when they started 10-2. I think they were 7-0 at one point, and he was part of the MVP conversation. But they need to win, obviously, for him to get back to that level. But he's playing some very good football right now.
How good is Marvin?
Dude, this kid he's unbelievable, right? Like, and I don't just say that because of his name. Like, he's legit. Like, it's going to take him a little bit to kind of get fully ingrained in the NFL game. Like he's still thinking off the line, whatnot. But he is so naturally gifted. Like the plays that he makes as a rookie are so smooth and so seamless. Like it's impressive. It's very impressive. He's a mismatch for a lot of corners. He always has been. But he has the hands, he has the size, the length, the quickness, the speed. Like he has everything. He's like a 5-tool baseball player in football.
Can Arizona run the ball consistently without taking away Murray's scrambles?
Yeah, they can. They weren't very productive doing it against the Rams on Sunday, but did they play the Rams on Sunday?
Lions.
Who did? No, the Lions. They played the Lions. We're in the middle of the season, I feel like. So, yeah, on the Lions, they weren't very productive running the ball against the Lions, but they can. They have an offensive line that's stout in the middle. They have, the right tackle's been a turnstile so far through 3 games on Sunday. But James Conner, he's a machine. He's a pound and grind type of guy. And if they get a lead, they will pound the ball as much as humanly possible. But when it's like catch up, as with anybody, they obviously abandon the run. And then I've noticed they really haven't trailed much, but they start to press a little too much. I think they really needed the run game to spread things out for Marvin, for Kyler, and then to get Kyler involved in the run game. They can get the Connor going. It opens up the edges for Kyler. That's when he kind of takes over. But then, it creates such a conundrum for defenses because then once he starts hitting the outside, they have to patrol the edges, which opens up the inside. Like it's kind of like 6 one way, half dozen the other. Like what are you going to pick? So the run game can be very potent, but it wasn't last week.
Last thing, where are they most vulnerable?
I'd say cornerback. I'd say if you have a quarterback who could place the ball where he needs to, it could be a very long day for this team. They can get to the pocket. They could disrupt the timing. They could disrupt the quarterback. But if the quarterback can get the ball out, then it can be an issue for this team. Especially in space. So if Jaden Daniels can match up with McLaurin again, I think it could be a long day for Arizona.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Always great insight. So you have surpassed Nick Wagner as my go-to guy. Well,
I appreciate that. That's an honor in itself.
And I will probably delete that if I ever need Nick again. So, I do appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course, man. I'll talk to you later.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Josh for joining me, and thank you as always for tuning in. I'll be back after the game with another episode wrapping up the Cardinals and the Commanders. Can they get to 3-1? I'll talk to you next time.